A gray October morning cast a foggy pall over Brookhaven, and Sarah Collins parked her tattered Honda Civic as usual near the service entrance of the county correctional facility. 8 years of working here had turned this routine into automatism. The same keys, the same pass, the same metal detector check at the entrance. "Good morning, Sarah." Guard Bill nodded to her, an older man with a good-natured face who'd worked here even longer than she had. "How's Rachel doing?" "Teenage problems," Sarah smiled tiredly, adjusting her uniform shirt. "Came home at 2 in the morning again last night. Says she was at a friend's house, but I'm not sure." Bill shook his head sympathetically. "It's hard to parent alone, but you're doing fine." Sarah didn't answer. Was she coping? The last few months had been particularly difficult. The divorce had been finalized a year ago, but the financial problems hadn't disappeared. Her ex-husband had been faithfully paying alimony, but it was barely enough to live in Brookhaven, and Rachel was becoming increasingly withdrawn and aggressive. Once through the security system, Sarah headed to her office in the administrative wing. Brookhaven Correctional Facility was a small facility, only 300 inmates, mostly men serving time for minor to moderate crimes. Nothing special for a town like this, where the population was barely 12,000. "Sarah, come in here a minute," a familiar voice called out to her. Jake Thompson, the warden, stood in the doorway of his office with a cup of coffee in his hands. In his 42 years, he looked tired, but maintained a professional demeanor. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, taking a seat in the chair across from his desk. "We have a new guy, Marcus Reed, 39 years old, transferred from Columbus for good behavior." Jake held out her personnel file. "Burglary, but not a first-time offender. Smart guy by all reports. Maybe too smart." Sarah flipped through the paperwork. Marcus Reed, a few priors but nothing serious, unfinished college education, worked as a car salesman until his last arrest, participated in educational programs in prison, got a high school diploma. "What makes him special?" she inquired. "I don't know exactly, just a feeling." Jake sipped his coffee without taking his eyes off the window. "Keep an eye on him. He'll be in C Block, your sector." C Block was considered one of the quieter ones. Prisoners here served time for non-violent offenses and usually didn't cause major problems. Sarah knew most of them by name. After 8 years on the job, the faces were becoming familiar. Around noon, she did her usual rounds. C Block consisted of 2 tiers of cells designed for 2 people each. In the center was a common area with a television and several tables for games. The atmosphere was relatively relaxed. Inmates played cards, watched the news, and read. "Mrs. Collins," a familiar voice addressed her. Tommy Vargas, a small-time drug dealer who was serving his 3rd year out of 5. "We have a new neighbor. Seems like a decent guy." Sarah turned toward cell number 23. Standing at the bars was a tall man with dark hair and attentive eyes. He was reading a book, something about psychology, judging by the cover. "Marcus Reed?" she asked, approaching. "Yes, ma'am." He looked up from the book. His voice was calm, educated. "Thank you for the warm welcome." There was no sarcasm or challenge in his tone, a simple politeness that was not often seen in a prison environment. Sarah noticed that he maintained eye contact but didn't stare. Confidence without aggression. "How are you settling in?" "Fine. Tommy showed me where the library is, where the classes are. I hear there's a vocational training program here?" "Yeah, welding and carpentry, but you have to serve a probationary period first." "I see." Marcus nodded. "And psychological counseling is available?" That was an interesting question. Most prisoners avoided psychologists, considering it a sign of weakness or snitching. Dr. Chen takes appointments on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can make an appointment through the administration office. "Thank you. I want to make good use of this time." Sarah continued her rounds, but her thoughts kept returning to the newcomer. Something about Marcus Reed stood out from the usual contingent. Perhaps that was what was bothering Jake. In the evening, picking Rachel up from school, Sarah pondered the work. Her daughter sat silently in the car, never taking her eyes off the phone. "How's school going?" "Fine," Rachel replied monosyllabically, without looking up. "Did you do your homework?" Attempts to get her daughter to talk usually ended in nothing. Since the beginning of the school year, Rachel had become even more withdrawn. Sarah suspected it was about friends. At 16, social acceptance meant more than anything else. At home, cooking dinner, Sarah thought about her life. The small house on the outskirts of Brookhaven that they had rented after their divorce. A job that offered stability but no fulfillment. A daughter who grew more distant with each passing day. At 34, she felt much older. The phone rang during dinner. "Sarah, it's Jake. I'm sorry to bother you at home." "What's wrong?" "Nothing serious. Just wanted to check in. How was your first impression of Reed?" Sarah glanced at Rachel, who was defiantly ignoring the conversation. "A regular inmate. Polite, educated. Why?" "I don't know. Maybe I'm paranoid, but something about him makes me wary. Too perfect." "Jake, you've worked here for 15 years. Being suspicious is an occupational deformity." "Maybe. Just be careful." After dinner, Rachel locked herself in her room while Sarah sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea. Outside the window, Brookhaven was sinking into evening silence. A small town where everyone knew each other, where the biggest event was the Friday night game of the high school soccer team. She thought about Marcus Reed. What drove an educated, middle-aged man to steal? Drugs, gambling, or something deeper? The next day, Sarah was making her rounds in C Block again. Marcus was sitting at one of the tables in the common area, playing chess with an older inmate named Earl. This was unusual. Earl was known for his unsociable nature and rarely socialized with anyone. "Nice move," Marcus said, moving a piece. "Have you been playing long?" "About 40 years, Earl grumbled. "My dad taught me when I was 10. My grandfather played too. Said chess taught you to think several moves ahead." Sarah noticed Marcus listening intently to the old man, asking questions about his life before prison. Earl, usually silent and somber, perked up under his scrutiny. A talent for communication or calculated manipulation. In the prison environment, the line between the two often blurred. "Mrs. Collins," Marcus called out to her after the party was over. "May I ask you a question?" She stepped closer. "Yes, I'm listening. I've heard there's a library here with legal literature. I'd like to explore the possibilities of parole. Contact the librarian. Mrs. Harris is available Monday, Wednesday, and Friday." "Thank you." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "And how long have you worked here?" 8 years. Must have seen a lot of different people." "Yes." "And what do you think of me?" The direct question caught her off guard. Most inmates either avoided talking to staff or tried to flatter. Marcus was simply showing interest. "It's too early to jump to conclusions. This is your second day here." "Fair enough." He smiled, not ingratiatingly, but genuinely. "Just want to get a feel for how life works here." It was different in Columbus. Brookhaven is smaller. Everyone knows each other here. It's like a regular town. "Yeah, pretty much." After work, Sarah stopped by the local supermarket. Brookhaven was so small that meeting people she knew in the store was inevitable. "Sarah, how are you?" Linda Parker, wife of the local sheriff, called out to her. They'd gone to the same high school, though they'd never been close friends. "Fine. How about you?" "Tom's complaining about his back again. I tell him to go to the doctor, but he's stubborn." Linda transferred the milk to the basket. "And how's Rachel?" "My Emma says she's gotten kind of weird at school." Sarah tensed. "What do you mean weird?" "I don't know exactly. She's withdrawn, doesn't socialize much. Transition age, maybe?" "Maybe." At home, she tried to talk to her daughter, but she limited herself to one-word answers and went to her room. Sarah felt the gulf between them widening with each passing day. At night, she had a strange dream. She was walking down the corridors of the prison, but the walls were transparent, and all the prisoners were looking at her. At the end of the corridor stood Marcus Reed and said something, but she couldn't hear his voice. It had been 2 weeks since Marcus Reed had arrived at Brookhaven Correctional. Sarah had noticed that he had adapted quickly to prison life, but not like normal inmates. Instead of seeking protection from strong factions or keeping to the shadows, Marcus built individual relationships. With Earl, he discussed chess and military history. With young Danny Martinez, self-development books. With Tommy Vargas, plans for life after release. "He's like a psychologist," Dr. Emily Chen remarked during a lunch break in the administration wing. "In counseling yesterday, He asked more questions than he answered mine. Knows how to listen. Sarah stirred her coffee while watching the prison yard through the window. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. It's unusual. Emily was a practical woman of Asian descent who had been a prison doctor for 5 years. Most prisoners either keep quiet or complain. Marcus studies people. That afternoon, Sarah was doing the evening shift, the time when inmates return to their cells after dinner and evening activities. The corridors of cell block C were gradually quieting down, but there was a quiet conversation coming from cell number 23. The problem isn't what you did, it's why you did it, Marcus's familiar voice said. His cellmate, Billy Johnson, who was serving time for fraud, was usually sullen and withdrawn. I just wanted a decent life for my family, Billy replied. Honest work wasn't bringing in enough money. I understand, but what happened to your family after your arrest? A pause. The wife filed for divorce. The kids are afraid of me. So trying to give them a better life led to a worse outcome. Sarah stopped outside the cell. Through the bars, she could see Marcus sitting on the bunk, listening intently to his roommate. Billy, who had barely spoken a dozen words with the staff in 3 years of confinement, was opening up to the newcomer. Evening rounds, Sarah announced as she approached the cell. Good evening, Mrs. Collins, Marcus replied politely. We were just having a chat. Lights out time is in half an hour. Of course. He stood up, approaching the bars. Can I ask you a question? Sarah hesitated. Staff were supposed to limit personal interaction with prisoners, but curiosity overpowered. What? Have you ever regretted your decisions? It was an odd question. Everyone regrets sometimes. I mean the drastic decisions, the ones that changed your whole life. Divorce. Sarah immediately thought of divorce. 2 years of fighting over a marriage that had died even earlier. A life built on compromise and silence. Why do you ask? Curiosity. People here do a lot of thinking about the past. I think about whether we could have done things differently. And what conclusion do you come to? Marcus smiled. Not the strained smile Sarah usually saw in prisoners, but genuinely. That the past can't be changed. But what can be changed is how we treat it. For the next few days, Sarah caught herself thinking about Marcus's words. Did she really regret the divorce? Or did she regret not deciding on it sooner? The marriage to Michael had started out romantic, but gradually turned into cohabitation. He worked construction, she worked in prison. He watched sports in the evenings, she read. They existed in parallel worlds, intersecting only in matters of Rachel's parenting. Mom, are you listening to me? Asked her daughter sharply at breakfast. What? I'm sorry, I was thinking. I said I'm staying over at Jessica's tonight, doing a history project. What project? Rachel rolled her eyes. About the Civil War. We've been talking about it for a month. Sarah couldn't remember a single conversation about the project. When had her daughter stopped sharing school news? When had their communication been reduced to one-word questions and answers? Okay, but call me when you get there. Uh-huh. Rachel grabbed her backpack and headed for the door. I'll see you tomorrow. At work, Sarah found that her thoughts often returned to her conversations with Marcus. He never crossed boundaries. No flirting, no trying to get special favors. Just talked as an equal to an equal, which was rare in a prison environment. Do you have children? He asked during another round. A daughter, 16 years old. A difficult age. Yes. Sarah was surprised at her own candor. Sometimes it feels like I don't know her at all. It's especially hard after a divorce, Marcus remarked. Sarah turned around sharply. How do you know about the divorce? I apologize. I didn't mean to offend you. He held up his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Just noticed. No wedding ring, but there's a faint band on your finger. And you sometimes say I instead of we when referring to your daughter. Observation or something more? Sarah felt a slight uneasiness and, at the same time, interest. When was the last time someone had listened to her so intently? You're very observant. Professional habit. In the automobile trade, you have to understand people quickly. And what did you realize about me? Marcus hesitated, studying her face. That you're stronger than you think, and being alone doesn't make you weak, it makes you cautious. The words hit exactly the right target. Sarah did feel lonely, but was used to hiding it behind a professional mask. "I should continue my rounds," she said, but her voice sounded less confident. "Of course. Thanks for the talk." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep for a long time. The house seemed especially empty without Rachel. She turned on the TV, but her thoughts wandered. Marcus saw things that others didn't notice, or didn't want to notice. The next day, Jake Thompson called her into his office. "How are things going with Reed?" he asked without preamble. "No problems. Adapted well." "I got a strange call from Columbus. They say he got the transfer too quickly. Usually these transfers take months." "Maybe really well behaved?" Jake looked at her incredulously. "Sarah, we've known each other for 10 years. I've never seen you so distracted." "What do you mean?" "You linger near the C block a lot. Bill says he's seen you there even in your spare time." Sarah felt the heat in her cheeks. "I'm just doing my job." "I hope so." Jake leaned back in his chair. "Look, I don't want to lecture, but be careful. Smart prisoners are the most dangerous." In the evening, Rachel returned home sullen and silent. She answered questions about the project with one-word answers. "How's Jessica doing?" Sarah tried to strike up a conversation. "Fine." "And her parents?" "I don't know." "Rachel, what's going on? You've become so withdrawn." The daughter turned around abruptly. "And you've gotten so weird, walking around the house at night, always thinking about something. And don't tell me everything's normal. Was observation hereditary? Or had Sarah really become that transparent?" "I'm just having difficulties at work." "What kind of difficulties? You've been working there for 100 years." "Not 108, and there are new challenges." Rachel looked at her mother studiedly. "Does it have to do with a man?" "What?" "You've started wearing different makeup and you bought new perfume last week." Sarah had indeed bought new perfume, but she didn't connect it to work. Or did she? "It's just a coincidence." "Uh-huh." Rachel headed toward her room. "Mom, just don't do anything stupid, okay?" Left alone, Sarah walked over to the mirror in the hallway. Had she really changed? Her makeup was a little brighter, her hair neater. She told herself it was just a desire to look better, but the next day during rounds, Marcus was reading a book on psychology. "Interesting reading?" Sarah asked. "Very. Carl Jung writes about how people wear masks, showing the world one face while hiding the true one." "And what do you think of that?" "That masks protect, but also limit. Sometimes we wear them for so long that we forget who we really are." Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. "Do you wear a mask?" "We all wear one. The question is whether we're ready to take it off." Their gazes met through the bars of the cell. There was nothing obscene or threatening in Marcus's eyes, only understanding and acceptance. "I have to go," Sarah said quietly. "Goodbye, Sarah." It was the first time he'd called her by her first name. That evening, as she prepared for bed, Sarah thought about masks. What mask did she wear? The strong and independent woman, a caring mother, a professional security guard, and who lurked beneath them? A woman who was afraid of being alone, who questioned her decisions, who wanted someone to see the real her. And it seemed Marcus Reed had already begun to look through the mask November had brought the first frost to Brookhaven. Sarah stood at the window of the administration building, watching the inmates return from their morning chores in the laundry and kitchens. Marcus was among them, helping the elderly Earl carry a heavy sack of laundry, though he didn't have to do it himself. It had been a month since his arrival, and Sarah had noticed how the atmosphere in C Block had changed. There were fewer conflicts, and the inmates participated more often in educational programs. It was as if Marcus had become an unofficial go-between, someone they turned to for advice. "Impressive results," Dr. Emily Chen remarked, approaching the window with medical records in hand. "In the last month, referrals to the nurses' station from C Block have dropped 40%. "Maybe it's just luck," Sarah replied, not taking her eyes off the courtyard. "Or Reed really does have a gift for calming people down." Emily was quiet for a moment, then added more quietly, "Sarah, there's something I need to tell you, but not here." They met at a cafe on Brookhaven's Main Street after their shift. The small establishment called the Main Street Diner was where the locals met, discussing news and gossip. Emily chose a table in the far corner. "What's up?" Sarah asked, stirring her coffee. "Marcus came in for counseling today, asked for an STD test." Sarah felt an unpleasant clenching in her stomach. "That's normal. A lot of prisoners ask for tests like that." "Yes, but not like he did. He was very specific. HIV, hepatitis B and C, syphilis, and he said he wanted the results as soon as possible." "Maybe he has reason to be concerned?" Emily leaned closer. "Sarah, he asked how long HIV can go undetected, and what symptoms appear first. Why are you telling me this?" "Because you've changed. In the last month, you've become different, more feminine or something. And I've noticed the way you look at him." Sarah set the cup aside. "Do you think there's something between us?" "I don't consider anything. I'm just worried about my friend." At home, Sarah found a note from Rachel. "Sleeping over at Jessica's. Museum trip tomorrow, don't worry. R." Short phrases, no extraneous details. When had their communication become so formal? She poured herself some wine and sat down on the couch. Emily's words were jarring. Was she really that transparent? And what did Marcus's questions about HIV mean? The phone rang around 9 p.m. "Mrs. Collins? This is Officer Richardson on duty. We have a small situation in C Block." "What happened?" "A fight between Vargas and Rookie Smith. Reed tried to break them up and got punched in the face. Nothing serious, but he's asking to talk to you." "With me? Why not with the duty officer?" "I don't know, ma'am. Says it's personal." Sarah hesitated. Going back to the jail on her own time was a breach of protocol, but "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The prison seemed like a different place at night. Dim lighting, the echo of footsteps along empty corridors, the occasional voices from the cells. Marcus sat in the infirmary, pressing ice to his busted lip. "You made it," he said when he saw her. "What happened?" "Smith's a junkie, withdrawal. Attacked Tommy over cigarettes. I just happened to be around." "Why did you intervene?" Marcus smiled through the pain. "Habit of protecting the weak. Tommy weighs about 30 pounds less than Smith." "That's not your job." "I know." He set the ice aside, looked at her carefully. "But some things are more important than the rules." "Like what?" "Humanity, compassion, caring for those we care about." The last words rang with special meaning. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "I have to go," she said. "Sarah, wait." Marcus stood up, stepping closer. "Thank you for coming. It means a lot. I'd do the same for any prisoner." "I know. That's why you're special." The distance between them had shrunk to a meter. Sarah could see the black eye under his eye, the small cut on his lip. The impulse to reach out and touch his face was so strong that she took a step back. "I really have to go." "Of course. Good night, Sarah." At home, she stood under the shower for a long time, trying to wash away the sensation of his closeness. What was happening to her? He an inmate, she a correctional officer. A chasm of rules, laws, and ethics between them. But when she closed her eyes, she saw his attentive gaze and heard the words that some things are more important than rules. The next day, Marcus's test results came back negative. Emily relayed them through Sarah, adding, "He said to thank you for last night." "Me?" "Said you showed real concern." On her lunch break, Sarah stopped by Marcus's office. The black eye had turned bright purple, but he was smiling, talking to Earl about a book. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Much better. Thanks again for yesterday." "I got your test results back. Everything's clean." "Great." He was quiet for a moment, then added more quietly, "Can we talk in private?" Sarah looked around. There were a few prisoners in the common area, but no one was paying attention to them. "About what?" "About what's going on between us." The directness of the question caught her off guard. "There's nothing going on between us. Sarah, we're both adults, and we both feel a connection. You're an inmate. I work here. That doesn't invalidate human feelings. It does cancel out the ability to act on them." Marcus moved closer to the bars. "And if it didn't?" The question hung in the air. Sarah knew she should leave, report the trespass, move Marcus to another block. But instead, she stood looking into his eyes. "It's impossible," she whispered. "Impossible or forbidden. They're different things." That evening, Rachel came home annoyed. "Jessica said the strangest thing. she announced, throwing her backpack on the floor. What kind of thing? That her dad saw you in jail late last night, but yesterday was Wednesday. You don't work on Wednesdays. Sarah froze. Jessica's father was Officer Richardson, who'd called her in for a fight. There was a little problem. I got called in. What kind of problem? A work problem. Rachel looked at her mother studyingly. Mom, what's going on? You've become so secretive. It's not a big deal. It's just that work has gotten more stressful. Does it have to do with that man you're thinking about? What man? Mom, I'm not blind. You act differently. You look in the mirror more often. You buy new clothes. And sometimes you smile at yourself. The daughter's observation was frightening. Rachel, you make up a lot of things about yourself. Really? Then why do you put on lipstick when you go to work? You didn't used to do that. Sarah had really started to pay more attention to her appearance, telling herself it was just a desire to look better, but I'm a grown woman and I have a right to look good. Of course you do. Just be careful, okay? The next day, Jake Thompson called her into his office again. Sarah, I got the report on the night's incident. Richardson wrote that Reed specifically asked for you. Yes, but I don't understand why. I do. Jake opened a folder on the desk. I made some inquiries about our perfect prisoner. Marcus Reed has been married twice. Both wives filed domestic violence reports, but then withdrew. The first wife said in an interview with the police that he had a knack for getting inside your head and making you do things you never planned. Sarah felt a chill in her stomach. That might be an exaggeration. Maybe it is, or maybe not. Jake closed the folder. Sarah, I've known you for years. You've been going through a divorce, raising your daughter alone. I understand it can be lonely. Jake, let me finish. Smart psychopaths are masters of manipulation. They find vulnerabilities and push them. Reed may be exactly like that. You don't know him. Do you know him? Jake leaned forward. Sarah, I'm saying this as a friend, not a superior. Be very, very careful. That evening, Sarah sat at home pondering Jake's words. Domestic violence, manipulation, withdrawn statements. But the man she knew was kind, considerate, understanding. Or was that part of the game, too? The phone rang at 11:30. It's Richardson again. Reed's asking for a meeting, says it's urgent. What kind of urgent? I don't know. He seems upset. Said it's about the safety of the other prisoners. Sarah hesitated. After talking to Jake, every encounter with Marcus seemed potentially dangerous. I'm on my way. Marcus was waiting for her in the same room of the infirmary. The bruise was almost gone, but the look on his face was serious. What's wrong? She asked. Smith is planning to attack Tommy tomorrow morning. He has a shiv. How do you know? He's been trying to enlist me as an ally. Thinks I owe him after the fight last night. Why didn't you tell the duty officer? Because he wanted to talk to you first. Why me specifically? Marcus stood up, stepping closer. Because I trust you. And because... He was quiet. Because you're important to me. Marcus, this shouldn't be happening. What's what? What's happening between us? What's going on? Sarah realized she was standing on the edge of a precipice. One step forward, and there was no turning back. Yeah, I think about you. More than I should. And how do you feel when you think about me? Confusion, fear, and, she took a deep breath, and things I shouldn't feel. Marcus reached out a hand toward the bars. Sarah. She looked at his hand, then at his face. There was no triumph or guile in his eyes, only understanding and something more. Slowly, as if in a dream, she approached the grate and touched his fingers with her own. Electric shocks ran from the point of contact throughout her body. It was wrong, dangerous, insane, and it was the beginning of the end. December brought snowstorms and early school vacations to Brookhaven. Sarah found that Rachel's constant presence at home made her even more nervous. It was as if the daughter could sense her mother's tension and watched her every move. Mom, are you going to work again? Rachel asked, seeing Sarah putting on her uniform on Saturday morning. Extra shift. We need money for Christmas. But there's usually a day shift on Saturday. Sarah froze, buttoning her shirt. Her daughter was right. She never worked on Saturdays. But Marcus had asked to see her, saying he had important information about the planned escape. Sometimes you have to work overtime." "Okay," Rachel stretched out, but she could hear the distrust in her voice. "Just don't take too long. We're supposed to watch a movie." At the jail, Sarah met with the duty officer, Wilson, a young guy who had recently transferred here from the patrol division. "Reed asked to see you in the office for a private meeting," he reported. "Said the information pertains to the security of the institution." The private meeting room was used for inmates to talk to attorneys and psychologists. A small room with a metal table, 2 chairs, and a glass partition that could be opened to hand over documents. Marcus was already waiting when Sarah entered. He looked worried. "Thank you for coming in. I really needed to talk to you." "What escape are we talking about?" "There is no escape." Marcus stood up, walking over to the glass partition. "I lied. I just wanted to see you alone." Sarah felt a mixture of disappointment and relief. "Marcus, this is a serious offense. I have to—" "What? Report that the prisoner requested a private meeting and then explain why you agreed?" He was right. Her behavior over the past weeks had been far from professional. "What do you want?" "Honesty." Marcus sat back down, never taking his eyes off her. "There's something between us, Sarah, something real. There can't be anything between us." "Why? Because I'm a prisoner? Because you work here? Or because you're afraid?" "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of feeling something real, of trusting someone again." The words hit the mark. After her divorce, Sarah was truly afraid of a new relationship, of new pain. "You don't know me well enough to jump to that conclusion." "I know more than you think." Marcus moved closer to the glass. "I know you wake up at 3 in the morning and can't sleep, wondering if you're making the right decisions. I know you blame yourself for your daughter's problems and think you're a bad mother. I know the last time you felt like a desirable woman was a long time ago." "How?" "Because I see you, the real you, not the mask you wear for the rest of us." Sarah felt a familiar giddiness. Every time Marcus talked about her true feelings, she felt exposed and understood at the same time. This is wrong. Many right things feel wrong, and many wrong things feel right. They looked at each other through the glass. Sarah saw his hand resting on the metal table and remembered the touch of their fingers a few days ago. "If we had met under different circumstances," she began, "but we met here, now, and that means something too." Sarah walked over to the glass, placed her palm on the transparent surface. Marcus did the same on the other side, and their hands made contact across the barrier. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "To be close, at least this way." On Monday morning, Dr. Emily Chen met Sarah in the hallway with a serious expression on her face. "We need to talk. It's urgent." They walked into the medical office, and Emily closed the door. "I got a strange call from Columbus, from the prison where Reed used to be incarcerated." "What kind of call?" "The prison doctor was asking about his labs. Turns out Reed tested positive for HIV before he was transferred." The world around Sarah rocked. What? What's more, he knew about it. The result came back a week before the transfer. But here, his tests were negative. Yes, because he bribed a lab technician in Columbus and switched the samples. Emily pulled papers out of a folder. "The real result is HIV positive, high viral load." Sarah slumped in her chair. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm afraid for you. Sarah, if there was anything between you two—" "Nothing happened," she replied sharply, but her voice trembled. "All right, but I insist that you get tested. Right now." The blood tests took a few minutes. Waiting for the results was a few hours that became the longest of Sarah's life. She mechanically performed her duties, but her thoughts were far away. What if? What if something had really happened between them? That evening of the same day, they met again. Sarah had lied to Rachel about working overtime and coming to the prison after her regular shift was over. "I know about the tests," she said as she entered the meeting room. Marcus didn't look surprised. "Know what exactly? That you're HIV positive, and that you've been hiding it." "Yes." The simplicity of the answer stunned her. "Why?" "Because I wanted a chance at a normal life. Here in a small prison where I'd be treated like a human being, not a terminally ill outcast. You endangered everyone. I haven't had sex with anyone. And if you had, Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's a hypothetical question. No, it's not hypothetical. Sarah pulled a medical certificate out of her pocket. My test is positive. Silence stretched for long seconds. Marcus stared at the certificate, then at her face. Sarah, when? When did this happen? Her voice was getting louder. I don't remember anything. You do remember. You just don't want to admit it. Memories began to surface in fragments. The evening 3 weeks ago when she came in because of another emergency. Marcus had asked for water and she had brought him a glass through the bars. Their hands touched, but longer than usual. Then there was a kiss through the bars. And then, you raped me, she whispered. No, you wanted it. You asked for it. I was under the influence. You manipulated me. I gave you what you wanted, a sense of intimacy, of understanding. Sarah slapped her palm on the glass. You killed me. You killed my life. I gave you a life, a real life where you finally felt like a woman. Rachel, my daughter, what am I going to tell her? You tell her the truth, that sometimes adults make mistakes. Mistakes? Sarah stood up, started pacing the room. That's not a mistake. It's a crime. What crime? We're both adults. We both wanted this. You're a prisoner. I couldn't consent by definition. Marcus stood up too, moving closer to the glass. Sarah, listen to me. What happened between us was real. For the first time in years, you felt alive. At the expense of my life. At the expense of my health. HIV is not a death sentence. Modern medicines. Shut up! She shouted. Just shut up! There was a knock on the door. The voice of the duty officer. Mrs. Collins, is everything all right? Sarah wiped away her tears, trying to pull herself together. Yes, I'm fine. As the footsteps withdrew, Marcus spoke again, but now his voice sounded different, colder, more calculating. Sarah, think logically. You can yell, accuse me, file charges, but what will that change? You already have HIV. Your career will be ruined, your reputation destroyed. Rachel will be teased at school. What do you suggest? Silence. You don't tell anyone about us. I get parole in 6 months for good behavior. We part ways and we each live our own lives. And if I say no? Marcus smiled, but the smile was cold. I have pictures. What pictures? Of our intimacy. You can sneak a camera phone into prison if you know the right people. The pictures show your face very well. Sarah felt the world fall apart completely. You planned this from the beginning. I planned to survive, and you were in the right place at the right time. Why? Why did you have to infect me? Because then you sure as hell wouldn't tell anyone anything. Who's going to believe an HIV-positive woman who claims she was raped by a prisoner? Everyone will think you were looking for your own entertainment. The reality of his manipulations became clear. He was studying her, finding her weaknesses, pressing them. Divorce, loneliness, problems with her daughter, they were all tools in his hands. You're a psychopath. I'm a survivalist. And right now, we both have a vested interest in keeping this story a secret. Sarah walked slowly toward the door, then turned around. You know what, Marcus? You're right. I really don't want anyone to find out about what happened between us. Smart girl. But you're wrong about one thing. What? You think the only way to keep a secret is to keep quiet. Sarah left the room and closed the door. A few minutes later, she returned with Guard Wilson. Escort the prisoner to his cell, she said, and inform Warden Thompson that we'll have a serious talk tomorrow. Is something wrong? Wilson asked. Yes, something's up. At home that evening, Sarah sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. Rachel was doing her homework in her room, with occasional music blaring. HIV positive, at 34, with a teenage daughter, in a small town where everyone knows everyone else. Marcus was right. Telling the truth meant ruining his life and his daughter's. But keeping quiet meant letting him win. There was a third option, the worst and the fairest. She opened a desk drawer and pulled out a small pistol, a gift from her ex-husband who insisted that a woman working in prison should be able to defend herself. Tomorrow, she would be back in prison. And Marcus Reed will no longer be able to infect anyone, no longer be able to manipulate, no longer be able to ruin lives. Tomorrow, she would put an end to this nightmare. But first, she needed to talk to her daughter. Rachel deserved to know the truth before everything changed forever. "Rachel," she called out, "can you come down here? We need to talk." The sounds of music faded. A moment later, her daughter appeared in the kitchen, looking apprehensively at her mother. "What's wrong, Mom? You look awful." "Sit down, please. What I'm about to say is going to change our lives." Rachel Collins awoke at 7:30 in the morning to the sound of sirens. Through her bedroom window, she could see police cars and ambulances racing toward the jail. Her mother had already left for work. There was a note on the kitchen table. "Left early. Talk to you tonight. Love you." Yesterday's conversation still echoed in the girl's ears. Her mother had told her about HIV, about being infected by a prisoner, about blackmail and threats. But most importantly, about planning to do something about it. "Mom, you can't kill a person," Rachel said through tears. "It's not a person, it's a monster," Sarah replied. "And if I don't do something about it, it will find a way to hurt others." "We can go to the police." "With what? With my words against him? You think anyone would believe an HIV-positive woman who was allegedly raped by an inmate?" Now, hearing the sirens, Rachel understood. Her mother had carried out her plan. Chaos reigned in the prison. Officer Wilson, the officer on duty, had discovered Marcus Reed's body at 7:30 in the morning during the morning check. The prisoner was lying on the floor of his cell in a pool of blood. The cause of death was obvious: a gunshot wound to the heart. Sheriff Tom Parker arrived 10 minutes after the call. Brookhaven had never known a murder in the jail in its history, fights and minor infractions at most. "Where's Mrs. Collins?" was his first question to Jake Thompson. "She's not here yet. The workday starts at 8 o'clock. "Was she yesterday?" Jake hesitated. "Yeah, but she left early. Said she wasn't feeling well." Parker looked around the cell. No sign of a struggle, no witnesses. Marcus's cellmate, Billy Johnson, had been moved to another cell block 2 weeks ago after complaints of strange conversations. Nearby inmates claimed to have heard nothing. "Guns?" a county police detective asked. "None found, but we're still searching." "Who had access to C block at night?" Wilson checked the log. "Only the staff on duty. I did my rounds at midnight and 4 in the morning. Everything was normal." "And the CCTV system?" "The camera in the hallway of C block broke down 3 days ago. Repairs are scheduled for next week. Too many coincidences for coincidence." Sarah arrived at work at 8 in the morning as usual. Parker watched her through the window, no sign of nervousness or unusual behavior. She parked, went through the controls, said hello to Bill. "Sarah," Jake called out to her. "To us." Sheriff Parker and Detective Martinez from the county police were waiting for her in the warden's office. "Sarah, there was a murder in cell block C this night," Jake said without preamble. She turned pale. "What? Who?" "Marcus Reed." Sarah slumped in her chair. "How?" "Gunshot wound. Time of death between midnight and 4 in the morning." Parker scrutinized her reaction. "Where were you that night?" "At home, with my daughter." "Can anyone confirm that?" "Rachel. We talked late. She went to bed around midnight." "Talked about what?" Sarah hesitated. "About school, vacation plans." "Mrs. Collins," Detective Martinez interjected. "Do you have a gun?" "Got a gun. A licensed one." "Can you show it to me?" "Sure, it's at home in the safe." "We'd like to take a look at it." "No problem." An hour later, they were standing in Sarah's house. The gun was in the safe, just like she'd said, recently cleaned with traces of oil. "When was the last time you cleaned it?" Martinez asked. "Last week. Do it regularly." "Have you fired it recently?" "No, last time was at the range about 3 months ago." The gun was seized for ballistics testing. Sarah signed all the necessary paperwork calmly, without objection. "Any other questions?" she asked. "Not yet, no, but we can come back." "Sure." After the police left, Sarah sat in the kitchen, drinking coffee with trembling hands. The plan had worked perfectly, too perfectly. She was really going to kill Marcus, had reached the prison, had taken the gun through the service entrance she'd used for 8 years and knew all the guards. But when she got to Marcus's cell, he was already dead. Rachel got home around 3 in the afternoon. Mom, I heard the news. That prisoner was murdered. Yeah. Is that you? Sarah looked at her daughter for a long moment. No, but I was going to. What? I made it to the prison with a gun, but someone beat me to it. Rachel sat down next to her mother. Who? I don't know. And frankly, I don't want to know. The next day, ballistics testing showed that the bullet that killed Marcus had not come from Sarah's gun. What's more, the gun hadn't fired in months. The investigation was a dead end. No evidence, no witnesses, no motive. The official theory was that another inmate had committed the murder for revenge or personal reasons, but there was no way to prove it. A week later, Jake Thompson stopped by Sarah's office. How are you feeling? Fine. Sarah, I need to say something. She looked up from her papers. There was something unusual in Jake's voice. What? That night, Reed was killed. I couldn't sleep, drove to the office to finish the reports. Saw your car in the parking lot. Sarah froze. And saw you walk out of the building through the service entrance, with a gun in your hand. Jake, let me finish. He walked to the window, turned his back to her. I entered the building, made my way to cell block C. Reed was still alive, lying on a bunk, reading. The silence stretched for long seconds. He saw me and smiled. Do you know what he said? Jake, it's so good of you to come. I need to talk to you about Sarah Collins. I have some interesting information. Sarah felt her heart pounding. He told me everything about HIV, about the blackmail, about the photos, said he plans to get parole and look for new victims in other cities. Jake, you don't have to... You know what I've been thinking? He turned to her. That some people don't deserve to live. That sometimes justice doesn't come from the courtroom. I have a gun too, Sarah. Unregistered. Bought years ago for self-defense. Jake pulled a small revolver from his desk drawer. I threw it in the lake outside of town that very night. Sarah looked at her friend with amazement and gratitude. Why? Because you're a good man who fell into the hands of a psychopath. Because you have a daughter who needs a mother. And because the world is a better place without Marcus Reed. And if they find out? They won't find out. Reed was a prisoner with a lot of enemies. Any one of them could have killed him. Jake, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Move on with your life. Heal. Raise your daughter. And forget that bastard ever existed. A month later, the Marcus Reed murder case was closed without solving. Officially, the killer remained unknown. Sarah was started on antiretroviral medication. The doctors were optimistic. With modern treatments, HIV was no longer a death sentence. Rachel knew the truth about her mother's illness, but she didn't tell anyone else at Brookhaven about it. They'd moved to another town in early spring. Sarah had found a job in the administrative office of the correctional system, away from the inmates. Mom, Rachel said one evening as they were unpacking in their new home, do you regret not killing him yourself? Sarah paused, holding up a photograph, an old snapshot of their family, from before the divorce, when everything had seemed simple and right. You know what the weirdest thing is? I regret not killing him sooner, before he had time to do so much damage. But then you would have been a murderer. And now I'm a victim who survived because of a friend. Sarah set the picture back on the shelf. Sometimes justice comes in the most unexpected forms. Do you think Uncle Jake did the right thing? Sarah pondered her answer for a long time. I think Mr. Thompson saved the lives of a lot of people who don't even know it. And I think sometimes right and legal are different things. That evening, Jake Thompson sat in his new office. He had been promoted to Regional Corrections Coordinator after a great job at Brookhaven. On the desk lay a report on the declining crime rate in the prisons under his jurisdiction. The phone rang. Thompson here. Mr. Thompson, this is Dr. Chen from Brookhaven. I have a question for you about a new inmate. Go ahead. Robert Kane, transferred from Columbus. Very intelligent, educated, quickly gaining the trust of the staff. But there's something I don't like about him. Jake felt a familiar unease. What exactly? He's overly interested in the personal lives of the female staff members, and today he asked for STD tests. I see. Jake picked up a pen, wrote down a name. Dr. Chen, I'll be at Brookhaven tomorrow. I think I should meet Mr. Kane in person. Good. Also, yes? I have a gun. It's unregistered, just in case. Jake smiled. That's good, Dr. Chen. Very good. Justice in the small town of Brookhaven took its own form. Not always legal, but always aimed at protecting the innocent from those who saw them as easy prey. And sometimes it was the only justice that mattered.